5 of the coziest smelling perfumes in my collection. It's wintertime. So now we're looking for some warmth. We're looking for perfumes or olfactive profiles that are a bit on the cozy side of things. And what do I mean? Well, amber, a little bit of spice, maybe some vanilla. We have our own independent associations with notes that we consider to be cozy in nature. Nevertheless, I'm going to be giving you my thoughts on these 5 perfumes and why I think they are super cozy for this time of the year. So make sure to stay tuned. Now, before I begin today's episode and I give you my thoughts on these 5 perfumes that I think are incredibly cozy, they're so warm, some of them are sweet leaning, some of them are boozy, some of them just put you in the mindset of the colder months of the year. And of course, in the winter time, very seldom do people wear fragrances that are very citrus heavy with bergamot and yuzu and neroli and petitgrain and blah, blah, blah. Usually people chase after some of the denser DNAs. I want to start the video off first by saying that if you're a fan of fragrance related content, and of course, if you love smelling your best, hit subscribe, hit the bell, and give this video a thumbs up for the algorithm. It would really, really mean the world to me, and it's absolutely free, but it helps me so much. Now, if you want to sample a lot of these fragrances and many more beyond this list, you can do so at scentsplit.com. I've been a consumer of ScentSplit since circa 2013, 2014. I've been using them for a very, very long time. They sell decants. You can get a milliliter, 5 mils, 10 mls, sample the fragrance on your skin, see how it works with your skin chemistry. And if you end up loving the fragrance, you can subsequently commit to the purchase of a full-size bottle. But of course, with a lot of these niche recommendations that are in the vein of like $200, $300, $400, it doesn't make sense to spend your money on a brand new bottle, especially not knowing what it smells like or how it's going to work with your skin's pH levels, so on and so forth. So these are 5 fragrances. I don't know if all of them are going to be available on ScentSplit, but I imagine a lot of them will be. So please sample them at ScentSplit. The first one that I want to talk about by Parfum de Marly is called Altair. Now, of course, if you don't know about Altair, you've been living under a rock. This is such a beautiful fragrance. It has this spicy vanilla. I think there's a touch of cardamom, but the vanilla in here is absolutely gorgeous. This is such a beautiful, delicious, decadent, gourmand fragrance. And good thing, because this is one of the only gourmand perfumes from Parfum de Marly. Everything else seems to be quite heavy. I know Carlisle has a lot of vanilla, and that happens to be my favorite from the brand. In many ways, I find that to be cozy too, but I think the patchouli almost adds like this layer of professionalism. Here, it's more about the vanilla, and when you're seeking that warmth, there's just something about sweeter smells, and I don't know what it is. Maybe because right around this time of the year, I tend to light a lot of sweet candles, or maybe it's because you have sweet hot cocoa, or maybe it's because you're just surrounded by a lot of, you know, the winter holidays, you have candy canes, and then Halloween, you have sweets there as well. So I typically associate sweeter smells with the colder months of the year, and Altair is such a gem. It is such a blessing to have this in the community and in the industry. It's such a beautiful offering from Parfum de Marly, and of course, that sweetness is immediately apparent. And despite the fact that it's marketed for men, a lot of women love this. I actually know more women that prefer this than men. So I think there's just something about this DNA that is very mass appealing, totally unisex. And a lot of the brands that have put out their own clone or version of this are actually marketing their clones as unisex, which I think is really interesting. And I think that's how the ladies initially discovered that this is such a beautiful fragrance. And despite the marketing, they continue to wear this one. Now, again, booze and spice is also something that people enjoy right around the colder months of the year. We have Angel Share by Kilian Paris. Now, there's a lot of dark winter-based fragrances from Kilian. There's Smoke for the Soul, there's Straight to Heaven, there is Love Don't Be Shy. I think there are so many beautiful winter fragrances, Dark Lord being another one, but in terms of coziness, this is one that I can't recommend enough. The cinnamon, the booze, what is it, cognac or whiskey or something like that, and the amber that is in here. It is very long lasting, on my skin at least. One of the longer lasting Kilian fragrances. And even with something like apple brandy, I think that's more of like a fall and spring fragrance. And of course, Roses on Ice is a great spring and summer fragrance in my opinion. But this is one wintertime forget about it. Old Fashioned is also very good. And then of course there's also Smoking Hot, which is amazing. Although I don't know if I would call that cozy necessarily. There's something about Angel Share in this particular DNA that I would consider to be very cozy. And I love this one, right? I'm pretty confident that Scent Split has this one. So if you haven't tried Angel Share, which I'm sure you have, but in the event that you haven't tried it, get yourself a sample of it. I think you'd really appreciate this DNA. Now this next fragrance, I love it. For me personally, from the brand Inicio Parfum Privé, which you can see over my shoulder here, Paragon is a great fragrance for the winter time. But again, if I'm going for coziness, I want a hint of spice, I want a hint of sweetness. And this one has saffron, there's also rum, and there's a lot of spices used in the synthesis of a rum accord in perfumery. And of course, there's also a bit of like a creamy vanilla, there's tonka bean, there's this hedione molecule that has this leathery dry down. And this one is Side Effect. I actually have 2 bottles of it. That's how much I really enjoyed this one. And I know there's also Narcotic Delight, which is a newer release, has cherry in it, gets compared to Side Effect, but there's just something about the original Side Effect. And also considering the fact that I've worn it in previous winters, because it's been around for a number of years now, every time I smell this fragrance, it always reminds me of just being bundled up at home, maybe sitting in front of a fireplace, drinking a cup of tea, reading a good book, and just enjoying your solitude. It's a beautiful fragrance, Side Effect by Inicio Parfum Privé. And this is one that I can't recommend enough. Also, would like to mention that a lot of these fragrances, especially these 3, are huge compliment getters. So if you're looking for something that has a high compliment factor, these 3 are really going to take the cake, as it were. Side Effect, having the hedione molecule in it, they've done studies that show that, when mammalian species smelled it side by side with another ingredient, which was kind of like a placebo, there was a sex differentiated response in the pleasure centers of the brain when they smelled hedione. So this is supposed to have like this feel good sensation when you wear it. And personally, I love the way that it smells. And I wear it despite that, whatever you want to call it, marketing scheme or whatever. I think it is real because they did a study on it, but I personally just love the way that it smells. All right, New Harlem by Bond Number 9. Now, I almost went with I Love New York for All, just because that fragrance is also like quite cozy and it's sweet and it's a little chocolatey and powdery. But there's something about this one. I know people always talk about that maple syrup accord that is in here. There's this ingredient that perfumer Maurice Roussel uses known as Immortelle, which is a floral ingredient that can kind of smell like maple syrup or fenugreek spice. And it's such a beautiful fragrance. And of course, there's also that added quirky element of the note of lavender. And every time Maurice Roussel creates a fragrance, like for example, Uncut Gem, there's all of the citrus and ambroxan, but he also threw this angelica note in there, which is really quirky. And with Musc Ravageur, there's this beautiful amber and vanilla. And then he threw this note of clove in there, which is quite the contrast, right? So I know this perfumer utilizes a lot of contrasting elements, which I think is such a cool thing. And it just makes the DNA so stand out and so original. And New Harlem is one of those fragrances where the coziness just speaks for itself. And also I've had this perfume for over a decade at this point, and I love it. It's the very first Bond Number 9 perfume that I ever purchased. And since then, I bought so many, including Chinatown, I Love New York for All, Central Park West, Montauk, Scent of Peace for Her, Scent of Peace for Him, Coney Island, I Love New York for Mothers, Riverside Drive, and those are the ones that I can see from this angle here. I have them all on a shelf across from me. But look, in the number 1 spot, I have 2 bottles of this as well. I love this fragrance. I will never stop talking about this fragrance. I know I've mentioned it in videos, I've reviewed it, I've covered it on other platforms, I've mentioned it in lists. I just love it. I'm sorry. It's one of my favorites, and for good reason. It's sweet. It has this hint of smoke in here. And there's always this thing that happens right around the autumn, maybe mid-October, where in my neighborhood, I'll step out of my house and like something's burning, and I'm like, this is autumn air. I know we're in the winter, but I see coziness in autumn too, okay? So there's just something about this fragrance where I love the way that it smells, that smoke, the amber, the hint of sweetness in the dry down. It is amazing. And this one by Maison Margiela is called By the Fireplace. Yes, there's also autumn vibes. There's Jazz Club. I love so many from the brand. By the Fireplace is the one that I ended up getting 2 bottles of, Burning Wood and Chestnut. That in and of itself sounds so amazing. Anyway, what perfumes are cozy for you? I would love to hear from you. So please drop your comment down below. Don't be a stranger. I love the interaction. And also, if you took anything of value from today's episode, I would really appreciate it if you would consider supporting the channel by clicking subscribe, hitting the bell, and giving this video a thumbs up for the algorithm. It would mean the world to me. So thanks again for watching. I love you all, and we'll see you tomorrow with a new episode.